Ma'am, you're holding up the line. The supervisor said it the way he said everything at the checkpoint, flat, bored, already finished with her. Dale Pruitt had run security at the Belmont County Courthouse for 9 years, and in 9 years he had decided he could read a person in 4 seconds. He looked at the woman in front of him, 70, maybe older, a gray wool coat, a phone held out in both hands like an offering, and he had already filed her under harmless and confused before she said a word. I need to make one call, she said. Before 9. No phones past the detector. Sign says so. He didn't point at the sign. He didn't need to. He held out a small gray bin. Phone goes in here, you get it back on your way out. It's about a case starting in courtroom 3 in 11 minutes. Lots of folks got somewhere to be, ma'am. Beside him, the trainee, 23, 3 weeks on the job, name tag still creased from the box, watched the woman's face. She wasn't flustered. She wasn't pleading. She set the phone in the bin herself, gently, like she was setting down something she trusted him to take care of, which told the trainee more than her words had. People who lie get loud. People who are right go quiet and let the facts do the work. His name was Marcus Webb, and on his first morning Pruitt had walked him down the line of bins and said, "You learn to read fast." Confused old folks, nervous first-timers, the ones in a hurry 'cause they're guilty of something. For seconds, tops, and you'll never be wrong, Marcus had nodded because that was what you did on your first morning. He hadn't yet learned that confidence and accuracy weren't the same thing, and he wouldn't, not fully, until this woman in the gray coat proved it to him in the space of one overlooked sentence. Can I at least tell you who to call, in case I can't get back to it, she asked. Pruitt was already waving the next person through. Courthouse isn't a message service. She didn't argue again. She walked through the detector, collected her coat from the tray, and went to find a seat in the gallery of courtroom 3, and Marcus filed the moment away without knowing yet that it would matter. Inside, the morning's first arraignment was already moving. The man at the defense table was 31 years old, a warehouse supervisor named Theo Castellan, charged with felony hit and run from a collision 11 days earlier on Route 9. He had no record. He had a public defender carrying 40 other files that week and a prosecutor with a clean, simple timeline, Castellan's truck, traffic camera plate match, a collision at 9:47 p.m., and Castellan's own statement that he'd been somewhere on the east side that night, vague enough to sound like a man building an alibi as he went. The deal on the table was 4 years, reduced from the maximum, contingent on a guilty plea before lunch. Castellan's hands shook on the table. His public defender, overworked and not unkind, leaned in and said the math everyone in that room already understood, that going to trial on a weak timeline against a clean camera hit was a gamble nobody advised an innocent man to take, because sometimes the truth isn't enough, only the proof is. In the gallery, the woman in the gray coat sat very still and listened to the prosecutor read the timestamp aloud, 9:47 p.m., and her hands tightened once in her lap, the only sign she gave. Marcus noticed it. He didn't know why yet. Her name, though nobody in that courtroom knew it that morning, was Adelina Reyes. For 31 years she had been a federal court reporter, the one who sat beneath the bench and took down every word in cases that made headlines and cases nobody remembered, retired now 4 years, living 2 streets from the courthouse, still walking past it most mornings out of a habit she'd never quite broken. 31 years of transcribing other people's worst days had taught her something most people never learned, that the truth almost always arrives late, dressed plainly, and easy to wave off if you're not paying attention. She had spent her career making sure it got written down anyway. She had been at her grandson's apartment the night of the accident on Route 9, the apartment 3 blocks from where Castellan's public defender had it placed at 9:47, because her grandson worked at the warehouse with Castellan, and because Castellan had been the one who drove her grandson's broken-down car to the shop that night, the two of them standing in her grandson's kitchen at 9:50 p.m. drinking the coffee she'd made them, while a truck that looked nothing like his, different plate, a fleet vehicle with the same model and color, caused the collision 4 miles away. She knew this not because she'd guessed it. She knew it because she'd seen it. And when the case had crossed her grandson's nervous mention 3 nights ago, "They think it's Theo's truck, Grandma, but Theo was at your place," she had called the public defender's office twice and left 2 messages nobody returned, and she had decided, calmly, the way she decided everything, that she would come herself, this morning, and put it on the record before they signed a man's name to a lie. She hadn't told anyone she was coming. She hadn't asked permission. In 31 years on that bench, she had watched too many true things arrive too late because somebody waited to be invited. She had also tried, at 8:51 that morning, to call her grandson to confirm he was bringing the receipt from the auto shop, the time-stamped one, 9:52 p.m., that would settle the matter in 30 seconds. That was the call Pruitt wouldn't let her make. At 9:02, the judge, a measured, unhurried woman named Judge Inez Calloway, 11 years on the bench, known for asking one more question than anyone wanted her to, looked up from the plea paperwork and did something attorneys in her courtroom had learned to expect and never quite predict. "Mr. Castellan." Her voice was even. "Before I accept this plea, I want to ask you something directly, and I want you to answer me, not your attorney. Where were you at 9:47 p.m. on the night in question?" "I was helping a friend's grandmother. Her grandson's car broke down. I drove it to Finch's Auto on Linden. I was at his apartment after, having coffee." His voice cracked on the last part, not guilt, the judge thought, watching him. Exhaustion. "I told the police that. I don't have proof. I didn't think to keep proof." "You don't think you'll need proof for being kind to somebody? Is there anyone who can confirm that?" "His grandmother was there." "Adelina." He looked at the gallery like he half expected her not to exist, like he'd convinced himself in 11 days that he'd dreamed the whole defense. I don't know if anyone's spoken to her." In the third row, Adelina Reyes stood up. "Your Honor. I was there. I tried to bring the proof myself this morning. Security confiscated my phone at the checkpoint and wouldn't let me place a call to retrieve the receipt confirming the time. The room did the thing rooms do when something true and unexpected lands in them, a held breath, a shift of bodies, the prosecutor's pen stopping midline. Judge Calloway did not raise her voice. She rarely needed to. "Ma'am, what is your name?" "Adelina Reyes." "And you say security confiscated a phone that may contain evidence relevant to this defendant's whereabouts, and prevented you from making a call to obtain that evidence before this hearing?" "Yes, Your Honor." Judge Calloway turned to the bailiff. "Get courthouse security. I want that phone in this courtroom in 5 minutes, and I want whoever made that decision to come with it." Marcus Webb stood at the back wall of courtroom 3 holding a small gray bin with one phone in it, and beside him Dale Pruitt stood with the particular stillness of a man recalculating every assumption he'd made in the last hour. He had not thought, at the checkpoint, that the woman's call mattered. He had thought, the way he'd thought about 100 people before her, that a phone held out by an older woman in a wool coat was a phone that could wait. Judge Calloway addressed him directly. "You're the supervisor who declined to let Mrs. Reyes make a call this morning?" "Yes, Your Honor. Policy is no calls past the checkpoint." "Did Mrs. Reyes tell you the call concerned an active case starting in this courtroom within minutes?" "She said something like that." "We hear that a lot, Your Honor. Folks always think their thing's the urgent one. Did you ask her what the call was about, or who she needed to reach?" A pause. "No, Your Honor." "Hand me the phone." The bailiff carried the bin forward. Adelina, still standing, gave the judge her grandson's number without being asked. Judge Calloway had the courtroom speaker line patched through, and the bailiff dialed. It rang twice. Then a young man's voice, breathless, like he'd been waiting by the phone for an hour without knowing why. "Grandma. Are you okay? I've been trying you since 8:50. "I'm fine, me Joe. I'm in the courtroom." The judge needs to hear what you have. What he had was simple, and it had been sitting in his jacket pocket the entire time, a receipt from Finch's Auto on Linden, dated the night of the accident, time-stamped 9:52 p.m., his name on it, Theo Castellan listed as the customer who dropped the vehicle. He read the numbers aloud, slow and clear, the way his grandmother had taught him to read anything that mattered. 9:52 p.m. Theo Castellan, 4 miles from Route 9, 8 minutes after the time of the collision listed in the prosecutor's own file, in a different vehicle than the one in the camera footage, with 2 witnesses and a paper trail neither the police report nor the plea deal had bothered to chase down. The prosecutor, to her credit, didn't argue the math. She asked for a recess to review the fleet vehicle registration against the camera plate, and 20 minutes later came back and withdrew the charge entirely. The truck on Route 9 belonged to a regional delivery company with a vehicle of the same make, model, and color, an error the original officer had made in a hurry and never double-checked, an error that had been about to cost an innocent man 4 years of his life because nobody had stopped long enough to let the truth catch up to the file. Judge Calloway did not gavel it through quietly. She read the dismissal into the record in full, named the timeline, named the receipt, and then turned back to the gallery. Mrs. Reyes. Thank you for not giving up on getting that call through. Then, to the bailiff, I want courthouse security's checkpoint log from this morning. Every phone confiscation, every refusal, the names attached. I'll be referring this matter to the courthouse administrator for a formal conduct review, and Mr. Pruitt will not be working a public checkpoint until that review is complete. The log, when it came, was in Pruitt's own handwriting. 8:51 a.m., phone confiscated, woman states urgent, declined, his own pen having written down, in real time, exactly the warning he'd chosen to ignore. He had no one else's account to blame. He had documented his own misjudgment without meaning to, in the careful, dutiful hand of a man who thought he was just doing his job. Marcus Webb watched all of it from the back wall, the grey bin empty in his hands now, and understood, clearly, for the first time in 3 weeks on the job, what watch and learn was actually supposed to mean. Not how to clear a line fast. How to listen for the difference between someone wasting your time and someone trying to save somebody else's. Outside, on the courthouse steps, Adelina Reyes buttoned her gray coat against the cold and waited for her grandson, who arrived at a near run and hugged her too hard, the way young men hug their grandmothers when they've understood, all at once, exactly how much was riding on 11 minutes and 1 phone call. Theo Castellan came down the steps a free man, stopped in front of her, and didn't know what to say, so he said the only thing that was true. You didn't have to come. Yes, she said, I did. Marcus watched them go from the courthouse doors, and he thought about the 4 seconds Pruitt had used to decide who she was, and the 31 years it had taken her to become someone whose word, once finally heard, ended a case in 20 minutes. He thought he would remember, every morning at the checkpoint for as long as he worked it, that the 4 seconds were never enough, that somewhere behind every calm, insistent voice asking for 1 phone call was a reason worth more than the line moving on time. He never worked a checkpoint the same way again. He started asking the question Pruitt never had, what's the call about, and more than once, over the years that followed, it was the only question that mattered.